The desert wind tasted like grit and regret. Each grain a tiny shard of what was, what could have been, what never would be. Through the scope, the world was a muted tableau of tans and browns, a stage set for a tragedy already in progress. The crosshairs danced a delicate, deadly ballet on the chest of a man a kilometer away, a man I knew nothing about except that he wore the wrong uniform. The sun beat down, relentless and unforgiving, mirroring the weight in my chest. It wasn't the heat, though that was oppressive enough to drown a man. It was the cold, creeping dread that settled in the bones, a permanent resident now. Each breath felt measured, each heartbeat a countdown. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the already fractured reality. The target moved, a slight adjustment of his stance, and a glint of metal flashed from his rifle. He was young, no older than I had been when I signed up, full of naive patriotism and dreams of glory. Now, he was just another pawn in a game played by men in comfortable offices, far removed from the stench of death and the gnawing fear that clung to you like the desert dust. The scope felt heavy in my hands, a burden of responsibility and guilt. Each squeeze of the trigger was a miniature execution, a judgment passed in silence, a life erased with a whisper. I blinked, the sweat stinging my eyes. The world through the scope swam back into focus. The target was still there, unaware of the invisible thread connecting us, the thread that stretched across the barren landscape, a thread woven with fate and regret. My finger tightened on the trigger, the metal cold against my skin. It wasn't about right or wrong anymore, not about good or evil. It was about survival, about living to see another sunrise, even if that sunrise was painted in shades of blood and sorrow. The wind howled, a mournful dirge, a lament for the lives lost and the innocence shattered. Her laughter echoed in my mind, a bright, shimmering sound that cut through the grim silence of the present. It was the sound of summer evenings, of bare feet on warm grass, of stolen kisses under a star-dusted sky. Sarah, her name was a prayer, a whispered plea for a world that no longer existed, a world where love and joy weren't luxuries but necessities. I remembered the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her dreams, the way her hand fit perfectly in mine, the way she made me feel like I could conquer anything. We were invincible, young and foolish and utterly in love. We met in college, a cliché of shared textbooks and late-night study sessions. She was an art student, vibrant and passionate, her canvases exploding with color and emotion. I was a history major, drawn to the stories of the past, but yearning to create my own. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, a spark of creativity, a hidden vulnerability. She chipped away at my carefully constructed walls, revealing the soft, scared boy beneath the hardened exterior. She taught me to laugh again, to dream again, to believe in the possibility of a future filled with happiness. Our first date was a disaster, a comedy of errors involving a spilled glass of wine, a misplaced wallet, and a wrong turn on the way home. But even through the chaos, there was a connection, an undeniable spark that ignited a flame. We spent hours talking, sharing our hopes and fears, our dreams and disappointments. We discovered a shared love of old movies, of long walks in the park, of quiet evenings spent reading side by side. She was my anchor, my safe harbor, the one person who understood me completely. I remember the day I proposed. We were on a picnic in the park, surrounded by blooming wildflowers and buzzing bees. I had rehearsed my speech 100 times, but when I got down on one knee, all the words vanished. I simply held out the ring, a simple band of silver, and asked her to marry me. Her eyes filled with tears, and she threw her arms around me, whispering yes over and over again. The world seemed to fade away, leaving only us, two souls bound together by love and hope. We planned a small wedding, a celebration of our love with our closest friends and family. We imagined a future filled with children and laughter, a life built on a foundation of trust and understanding. Then the war came. A distant rumble at first, a news story on the evening news, a political debate on the radio. But the rumble grew louder, the news story more urgent, the political debate more heated. And then the call came. Duty called. I told her it was my responsibility, my obligation. I told her I would be back soon. I promised her a lifetime of happiness. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. She knew that the world we had built together was about to be shattered. The last thing she said to me as I walked away was, "Come back to me." And I promised her I would. A promise I wasn't sure I could keep. The radio crackled, a voice tight with desperation. "Sniper team, we have a visual. I repeat, we have a visual. High-value target entering the marketplace. Eliminate." My breath hitched. A marketplace. Crowded. Civilian. But the order was clear. High value, eliminate. The crosshairs settled on him. A man in a simple gray coat, haggling over fruit. Around him, life buzzed, children chasing pigeons, women with baskets overflowing, the shouts of vendors. Each a ghost in my scope, a potential casualty. Doubt clawed at my throat, a bitter taste of bile. I glanced at Marcus, his face grim, unreadable. He knew the weight of this decision, the burden of the order. He gave a barely perceptive nod. My finger tightened on the trigger. A bead of sweat trickled down my temple, blurring my vision for a fraction of a second. The man in the gray coat straightened, turned, and for a fleeting moment, his eyes met mine through the scope. An ordinary face, etched with worry. A father, a husband, a son. The world shrunk to that face. Then a deafening roar. The recoil slammed against my shoulder. The marketplace erupted in chaos, a whirlwind of dust and screams. Through the dissipating smoke, I saw him fall, a crimson stain blooming on his gray coat. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting back the nausea. The radio buzzed again, a terse, target neutralized, good work team. Good work? My hands trembled as I disassembled the rifle, the metallic clicks echoing in the silence of my own conscience. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. "It's done," he said, his voice low. "We did what we had to do." But the words felt hollow, offering no solace. The image of that face, that fleeting connection, was seared onto my mind. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I would never truly be done. The marketplace, the screams, the crimson stain would forever be etched into the chambers of my heart. Now, the scent of rosemary and thyme hangs heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the acrid smell of gunpowder that still clings to my memory. I trace the worn edges of the wooden table with my finger, the silence of the French countryside a constant, suffocating presence. The war is over for everyone else, it seems, but not for me. The nightmares come in waves, triggered by the most innocuous things: a gray coat hanging in the closet, the sound of children playing, the sight of fresh fruit at the market. They drag me back to that marketplace, to that fleeting connection, to the moment I shattered a life. I see a therapist, a kind woman with gentle eyes and a soothing voice. She asks me about my feelings, about the trauma. I try to explain, to articulate the weight of the guilt, the crushing loneliness of being the one who pulls the trigger. But words seem inadequate, failing to capture the depth of the darkness that consumes me. Sometimes I find myself staring at my reflection in the window, searching for the man I used to be, the man who believed in right and wrong, in black and white. But all I see is a ghost, haunted by the echoes of war, by the face in the scope. The villagers are kind, offering smiles and nods of understanding. They know I was a soldier, that I fought for their freedom, but they don't know the price I paid, the part of myself that I lost in the war. I am an outsider, forever separated from them by the invisible wall of my past. I try to find solace in routine, in the simple tasks of tending the garden, preparing meals, reading books. But even these small pleasures are tainted by the memory of the marketplace, by the knowledge that I am living a life that another man was denied. The loneliness is a constant companion, a shadow that follows me wherever I go. It whispers in my ear, reminding me of the lives I took, of the innocence I destroyed. It tells me that I am not worthy of peace, that I am destined to carry the burden of my actions for the rest of my days. And sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, I almost believe it. The scope, once my tool, is now the lens through which I view my own broken soul, a soul forever scarred by the view from a sniper's nest.
The wind whipped around Elias, a mournful cry echoing the hollowness inside him. He lowered the rifle, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. The world swam back into focus, the ruined city no longer a chessboard of targets, but a graveyard of dreams. He saw the woman, the doctor, kneel beside the boy, her shoulders shaking. No victory here, only dust and despair. He climbed down from his perch, each movement heavy with the weight of unspoken grief. He walked towards them, boots crunching on shattered glass, the sound amplified in the sudden silence. He stopped a few feet away, unsure, unwanted. The woman looked up, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Her eyes, once filled with a fierce determination, now held only exhaustion and a profound, unyielding sorrow. She didn't speak, didn't accuse. Her silence was a heavier burden than any curse. The boy stirred weakly, his eyes fluttering open. He saw Elias, and a flicker of recognition, of something akin to trust, passed across his face before fading back into the darkness of pain. Elias knelt, his joints protesting. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the small wooden bird he'd carved as a child, the one he always carried, a reminder of a life before the war, before the scope became his world. He placed it in the boy's hand, closing his fingers around it. "Fly," he whispered, his voice hoarse, barely audible above the wind. "Fly away from here." He stood, turning away from them, unable to bear the weight of their grief any longer. He walked towards the edge of the city, towards the setting sun, a crimson stain bleeding across the horizon. He didn't know where he was going, didn't care. The war had taken everything from him, stripped him bare, leaving him with nothing but the echo of gunshots and the ghost of a boy's smile. He reached the outskirts, the ruins, giving way to a desolate field, scarred and barren. He stopped, the wind tugging at his clothes, urging him onward. He looked back at the city, a jagged silhouette against the dying light. A single tear traced a path down his cheek, a silent testament to the lives lost, the innocence stolen. He thought of Maya, her laughter, her touch, the dreams they had shared, now buried beneath the rubble. He thought of his father, his unwavering belief in justice, now a distant memory. He thought of the boy, his fragile hope, now entrusted to a wooden bird. He closed his eyes, inhaling the dust and the smoke, the scent of death that permeated everything. He felt the emptiness inside him, a vast, echoing void that could never be filled. He opened his eyes, the setting sun reflecting in their depths, a flicker of defiance igniting within him. He wouldn't let the darkness consume him. He wouldn't let the war define him. He would carry the weight of his actions, the burden of his choices, but he would not surrender. He would find a way to live, to rebuild, to honor the memory of those he had lost. He turned his back on the city, on the war, on the ghosts that haunted him. He walked towards the horizon, towards the promise of a new dawn, a new beginning. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he wouldn't face it alone. He carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he also carried the hope of a child, the memory of a love lost, and the unwavering belief in the possibility of redemption. He walked on, into the gathering darkness, a lone figure silhouetted against the fading light, a sniper no more, but a survivor, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The wind carried his name, a whisper lost in the vastness of the world, but he knew, in his heart, that he was not forgotten. He was the echo of a fallen world and the promise of a new one. He was the silence after the storm and the hope that bloomed in the ruins. He was alive, and that was enough.